Welcome back to the LifePro Podcast, where today I have Rebecca Schocker, who is a mindset coach. Rebecca, I got to meet you during pandemic. I think it was an interesting time for both of us, and we kind of went through different things. So I know that both of us have had some changes in the past few years. So I'm lucky to have you here on the show to talk about some of these things. So why don't you tell us more about yourself, tell us more about your journey and how you got here?
Awesome. Yes. Thank you, Omid, for having me. It's an honor to be here. I'm super excited to be conversing with you and definitely was in a different space when I met you, but not a bad space, but lots of things have changed and I am not in California now. So I'm glad that we're still staying connected. Anyway, so I am Rebecca Schocker. I am a mindset coach. I have been in the coaching world for 5+ years, but I've been in the psychology sector for about 20+ years, really helping individuals with their mental health and their mindset. And I really kind of started my coaching practice after my divorce, which was almost 6 years ago now. And I knew that I always wanted to help people. It's kind of why I got a degree in social work and why I've been so passionate about psychology and mental health and mindset. I just didn't know back then kind of what that looked like. So kind of going through my own life experience, having a divorce, kind of dealing with that and the custody battle and the trauma from really having, going through a divorce, it kind of set me on this path to wake up and figure out who is Rebecca and how am I going to make an impact and serve and give back to others. So here we are today.
Got it. That's amazing. That's a great story. So today our topic is self-love.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. I know that you're passionate about self-love and you've experienced, obviously your divorce and things that you've experienced through your life has brought you to reflect on that topic. So tell us what is self-love in your opinion? What does that mean?
Yeah. So to me, self-love is really the ability to fully love and accept yourself, to not feel guilty about it, to not feel like you're being selfish, and to really honor yourself and your own truths.
Got it. So how do we love ourselves more? I mean, I feel like I love myself, I think, but I think that there's things I can do for myself to honor myself, I guess, more often and be in a better mental mindset. How do we get to that point?
For sure, that's a great question. So it's interesting because as I coach people at the individual level and seeing, hundreds of people, they'll come into my office and they'll tell me, yeah, I love myself. But then we start doing the work and we find out they don't really love themselves. And a really good indicator to that, to know if we are loving ourselves at the full capacity, is the reaction to like our daily behaviors, right? Like, so how we're showing up in the world, how we're treating ourselves is really an indicator to show us how much we do love ourselves. So really being able to love yourself, and really it comes down to accepting yourself, right? And so when we accept ourselves for the way that we are, for the things that we've been through, for all of maybe our past mistakes or our experiences, and really honoring where we're at and where we're going is really the first step in, kind of developing a healthy self-love.
Is it more about a mindset or actions towards self-love? Does it mean like taking baths or does it mean just feeling better about ourselves?
It's both. So we have this idea. So society, it's really trendy right now, especially like in the media and on TV and stuff that we'll see on shows that, self-care is huge. And people have this idea that self-care is like the pedicures, the manicures, the massages, taking baths, doing those pampering things or going out golfing with the buddies or just, taking that time, which that is one form of self-care, but that's not true self-love, right? So self-love is meeting your emotional, your physical, your psychological, your spiritual needs by yourself, right? And that does take the work of being compassionate with yourself and your thoughts and your mind, right? So it is an act, but it's also work that you have to do with your thoughts. If that
And
makes sense.
yeah, it makes complete sense. How do you gauge how much you love yourself, and what do you tell your clients as far as to get to that point to understand, do they really love themselves?
Yeah. So how do we gauge that? So it's really going to determine like how you're showing up. It comes back to those daily behaviors, right? Are you taking care of yourself in all areas? Are you healthy, right? Are you going to the gym and moving your body because you know that that's a form of self-love, right? Because it's your physical health. Are you surrounding yourself with positive people that are good for your mental health, that are serving your highest and your best, right? So
Yeah.
when we start thinking about that on a deeper level of being intentional and kind of how we want to show up in the world, we start to do things differently, and we have a deeper understanding of why we do it, right? So like the reason that I'm driven and disciplined as far as my physical health, it's because I care about my physical health, right? We've all heard that the term, health is the new wealth. So it's really like, are you putting garbage in your body? Are you eating like crap? And so therefore, if it is, it's telling me like, maybe you don't really love yourself enough, right? And I'm not saying that there isn't room to, eat less than healthy food, that's not as good for you, but it's really those little behaviors are kind of going to be the accumulation of what we really feel about ourselves.
Right. So a lot of that is physical, in that taking care of yourself. It starts with taking care of yourself with your diet habits, your sleeping habits, your water intake. All those things are a component of getting to that point where you love yourself more and respecting yourself.
Yeah, and it comes down to intention and decision, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
when you decide that you care about yourself, that you're worth it, that
Right.
you value yourself, you're willing to like set your compass in the ground, and then every action should match that decision of what you've decided because you love yourself. And so
Right.
we see people that they don't necessarily love themselves enough because their daily behavior tells me that they don't value themselves. So they stay in these unhealthy relationships, right? They have these unhealthy behaviors
Yeah.
that are not helping them. It's not serving them, but it's really a mindset game, and it's really a self-love and self-acceptance game.
My question to you is, what advice do you have for people that might be in a toxic relationship, whether it's a friend, a family, or spouse, and those people are having an effect on their moods and their well-being, and their level of love for themselves? What advice do you have for those people to potentially remove the toxicity and negativity, or not let that negativity affect their life?
For sure. So the first thing with anything is self-awareness, right? You have to be able to be aware of the situation and your own feelings and your own emotions. That's number one. And nothing can happen or change unless you have that self-awareness, right?
Right.
And I say this to my kids all the time, like if they're fighting, right? And I say, you're really going to let what they said affect how you're going to behave or react.
Right.
And so it goes the same for with adults. It's like if we are reactive and we let other people's behaviors control the way that we respond, then we have no emotional or mental control, right? So I'm not saying that we're not going to go through life and other people aren't going to annoy us or bother us, but it's really the ability to have your own self-regulation, right?
Right.
So that's step two. So it's self-awareness. Step two is being able to regulate your emotions and your responses, right? So we don't react, we're not reactive. And then honestly, it comes down to having, and this is my rule, open, honest, direct communication, right? And so that looks like being able to speak your truth, speak up, share your feelings, even though these may be really difficult for people to do, especially if you're in a pattern of not having great communication with your partner or your spouse or your mate, whoever you're with, right? Or maybe it's a mother, a father, or maybe it's a sibling. if you don't have that communication already, it's going to feel really, really scary to open up and talk.
Yeah.
But the best thing that I could do, which is another form of self-love, is speaking your truth, right? And the closer that we step to our own truth, the easier it is to actually speak up for ourselves. So it really comes down to that self-awareness, knowing what you want, what's true to you, what your value is, that you're worthy,
Right.
and being able to communicate it, right? Because without communication, then we have total dysfunction, right?
Sure.
People are disconnected, because really the ultimate thing, Omid, is that people are really, I think, wanting to be seen and to be connected, right?
You brought up your kids, and that, as a parent myself, and within my network group of friends, I tend to see that a lot of parents are focused on the well-being of their children and the happiness of their children, and they lose sight of their own happiness and self-love. What advice do you have for those parents that might have taken on that identity as a parent, and that's taken over their own happiness?
And you said a key word there, it's identity, right?
Yeah.
So we get into the thick of raising kids and being parents. Fathers do it too, but on a different level. Women tend to lose their own identity, right? Especially, let's just say, if they're stay-at-home moms doing most of the child rearing, right? They kind of lose their identity. They lose really their own autonomy and taking care of themselves, because they're so busy taking care of the family, which we can all admire that, right? That we all do that. And just as men have different roles of, being the breadwinners. And of course, that's not for everyone. It's kind of changed in the last, few decades. But my point is, we lose our identity. And so if you're to that point and you don't really know who you are, and this is kind of what happened to me, is I do love being a mother and I love being a wife, but I knew that there was something more for Rebecca, right?
Yep.
And so how was I going to express that part of me, give that back to myself, even though I was so busy doing these other roles, right?
Yeah.
So really, my advice is, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? And we've heard that. And you can't be your best parent or your best version of you if you are empty, right?
Right.
Well, I always tell my clients, you have to look out for number one. You have to look out for the person staring back at you in the mirror, because if you don't, nobody else will, right? That's your obligation by being alive, is you have to take care of yourself.
Right.
And when you do that, you open up this space to have more connection, better relationships, more nurturing, conversations and connection. Yeah. And it's really, really important that we do that, especially as parents, because we're teaching our children how to do that for themselves.
Yeah. And
right.
So all of that is self-reflection. And you mentioned communication, and it's not only communication with your children, your spouse, but also communicating with yourself and understanding, okay, how am I feeling right now? Why am I acting this way? Why am I saying these things? And, for me as an individual, as a businessman, as a friend, a husband, a father, it's very important for me to get to flow state, which is really understanding, be cautious of everything that I do. It's very equivalent to, somebody being, in sports and in the zone, where everything just comes easy, right? And I think that once we get to that point of being in the zone as a parent, as a spouse, or even in business, we just make better decisions and we act accordingly, properly. And you're right. It all comes down to having that right relationship with yourself, that self-love for yourself, and that improves all of your relationships and all of the things that you do. So I think about that a lot, and I think that's important point that we've made here, and I think that hopefully people carry that away from this topic, as that's very vital.
And I just want to add to that. You're absolutely right. I would say, take it one step deeper, we can call it flow state or in the zone. To me, it's about consciousness and being conscious and aware of your behaviors, right?
Hmm.
How are you speaking? How are you responding? How are you
Yeah.
feeling, right? I always
Yeah.
say dig deeper on that.
Yeah.
And then it comes down to intention, right? So
Right.
it's really about being an intentional person.
Right.
Everything I do, every move, every word I say is intentional. It has a purpose, right?
Right.
You can't just talk the talk to like blow hot air, right? That's
Right.
not going to get me to where I want to go.
You're right. Right.
Right. So being present with our kids, being intentional with our words and our behaviors, and you can do that in every area of your life to create, more of a, I would say, healthy environment for everyone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with all of that. And another topic that's been kind of like fresh on my mind has been, I feel like uh, within families, their financial well-being has also an impact on their relationships. I think that money tends to complicate things. Um, and I wanted your opinion on that. Like, how do you deal with clients that have financial issues that potentially affect their relationships, whether with their spouse or their kids or their own self-love?
So I'm guessing when you say financial, uh,
Hardship.
yeah, like because, and let's face it, like it's times are kind of hard for some people right now. The
Yeah.
economy's, it's tight. Like people are not,
Yeah.
the money that they once had maybe is not there. So yeah, when people don't have a lot of money, it's really coming from, it's really, to me, it's in your mind, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, money is a tool that we have to exchange, right? It's an
Sure.
energy,
Yeah.
but really trying to like create more money or to not be stressed out about the money is really when you're in that state, and this is an energetic place, right? So
Right.
when you're in that fearful state of like lack and scarcity that you don't have enough, you're going to keep attracting that and creating that because you're stuck in that mindset, right?
Right.
So if you're always looking like, oh my gosh, I've got these many bills I have to pay, I don't have this much money this month, you're going to continue to put energy towards that. And so you're going to see more of it. And so when you have couples that are struggling with the finances, I like to suggest like a simple shift. It's a really subtle pivot to kind of focus on what you do have, what is working, how you can see abundance in your life, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's not going to make more money come to you magically. This isn't,
Yeah.
witchcraft or anything, but it is really the energy, right? And so if you need more money, if you want more money, you want to attract more, you have to add more value, right?
Right.
Do that by changing our energy. So we have to raise our energy levels.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as far as like at the couple level of dealing with that, that's something I truly believe both people need to be on board with it, right?
Yeah.
Because I've
Absolutely.
worked with couples like one person's all about manifestation and creating more and attracting more, and the other doesn't, is not on
Yeah.
board. It's
Yeah.
really it's that gap, and that's really hard. But I promise you, if you start focusing on what you do have and
Yeah.
already being grateful, being thankful for it, you'll start to feel energetically better. And when you feel lighter, you open up the doors and the possibility to actually create more attractive.
Yeah.
Not to go off on that side tangent, but that's kind of
I don't think it's a side tangent. I think being positive and manifesting the positive is all part of self-love. I think that's all part of being positive with the world and being positive with yourself. Like that, it's a complete mindset. And I'm a firm believer of energy and shifting energy, and I think that um, that's a big part of what I do. And we all have problems, and we all go through troubles and moments in our lives that are turning points, and having the right attitude about it and the perseverance to get through those things is what you know separates us as successful and not successful.
absolutely. And I think too, when you're constantly in that state or that energy of scarcity or lack, right?
Right.
Like it's really hard to see outside of yourself to see the bigger picture. But really, it is a mindset thing because if we think about it, there's abundance everywhere, right? We go to
Absolutely.
the grocery store, there's like so many Like the
Yeah.
aisle is loaded with food and shelves of food. It's like there's
Yeah.
abundance. Really, it's in your thinking, right?
Yeah.
So when you
Yeah.
can change your mindset about it, you can change your life.
Absolutely.
It all starts up here.
100% agree. This is fantastic. So, Real with Rebecca, tell us more about that.
Yeah. So obviously very intentional with that name. And I've just always tried to display of just being myself, right? Like everything that I teach my clients, every module, every lesson that I walk them through, I have done the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't be a good leader or a good teacher if I didn't have a deeper understanding of it, right?
Sure.
So Real with Rebecca is really just fully accepting myself, right? Putting myself out there, being a little uncomfortable on camera, which is not my favorite thing, but I do it anyway. That showing people, showing the world that, like, this is who I am, right?
Yeah.
Accepting myself, because you know what? Like, I'm super confident in what I deliver, in my services, in my coaching, right?
Yeah.
I'm good in that area. So guess what? That allows space for me to be goofy and funny and zany at times. And that's really the persona that I try to put out there, is that, like, there's no faking, there's no pretending.
Right.
Say stuff and I'm going to be direct, but I'm also going to be like really real. Sorry, I
Yeah.
keep doing this. I've got little bugs in my house. But yeah, so just try to keep it real. And like, honestly, like getting to this place in my life of just fully accepting where I'm at and
Yeah.
being totally cool with it, and like
Yeah.
loving myself and the journey. And that's probably been the most beautiful thing throughout all of this, is like the amount of self-love that I have for myself, and that I,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It enjoys you to have it allows you to have a better life, and also it attracts positivity, and it helps your relationships because you're happy with yourself. It starts with you.
Yeah,
So,
it all starts with you. And it's just showing other people, like, this is what's possible. I'm not
yeah.
perfect. I don't have this perfect social media feed or this, perfectly curated outfits. Like, this is what I am. I pretty much wear
Yeah.
the same thing every week. Like, there's no
Yeah.
pretending. Just
Like,
be real. Like, those are the
yes.
things that don't matter, right?
Right. Right. So, last three questions, I ask everybody the same thing. Life Pro is the manual to life. What the whole concept behind the podcast is just, to teach people. And, I always wondered, anything you buy comes with a manual, a TV, a telephone, anything we buy has a manual. It tells you exactly what to do, not to do, how it works. But life doesn't really have a manual. And there's a lot of things that, as we grow older, we wish that our parents told us to do. And, we're all learning every day. That being said, I know we've touched on a lot of different topics today, but what is one thing that you would want to teach the world?
For sure. So I would teach the world, and what I'm trying to do, one person at a time, is to teach them that everything that you're seeking or desiring or wanting, it's already within you, right? We live in this culture where, we sensationalize the next biggest thing that we can do to help
Right.
ourselves. We want the quick fix, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's drugs or alcohol or
Yeah.
ayahuasca, or whatever people are talking.
Yeah.
It's like, it's here. Those
Yeah.
are external things. And it's like, you don't need anything outside of yourself to make you feel whole. It's
Yeah.
all happens with here and here. And it's teaching people how to tap into that, so
Yeah.
they can coach themselves, they can help themselves, they can heal themselves.
Right. I I mean, you're absolutely right. I find that, people are looking for more money for more happiness, or they're looking for a fancy car for happiness, or a bigger house, and all these material things. And what happens is when you get those things, you don't get that satisfaction, and you're looking for the next thing, and you're never satisfied. And I think you're absolutely right. It starts within, because those material things are not the answer to our problems. And those drugs, those alcohol, different types of things that we do just to, like, numb our pain or make us feel good,
Mhm.
they're never the answer. And
It's
and and I don't and I think people don't understand that. They don't understand it.
They don't, especially when we're in that compare game, and social media is a big thing, right? And we're seeing all these other people, these
Yeah.
23-year-olds that are, making, 7 figures, right?
Right.
So we have to really like understand it at the neuroscience level. It's just a dope hit, right? This
Yeah.
is a dopamine hit. Every time that you think that you get that car, that handbag, right, that watch, it's never
Yeah.
going to fulfill you because it's temporary.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between chemicals of serotonin and dopamine, right?
Yeah.
Long so it's pleasure and happiness, which I could go a whole other
Yeah.
episode talking about that, right?
Yeah. I
And it's
agree. I agree. And it's even shopping, online shopping, it's a dopamine hit because we're buying something and we think it's going to give us that satisfaction, but it gives us a little bit of a boost and then it lets us down.
it's
So
temporary, right? And
yeah,
so if you really
temporary.
want long lasting, if you really want that feeling, and still having the lifestyle, still having the cars, the houses, all of that, but if you want that full connection, you have to do the internal work yourself,
Right.
right? And it
Right.
comes with that self love and self acceptance.
Absolutely. So what is one book that you've read that has had the most impact on your life that you would recommend everybody to read?
So I've read a ton. I love to read. And I would say the one that stands out to me is probably The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. And
Yeah.
that is such a great book for me at a very pivotal time in my life, right?
Right.
I just got it. And he kept saying, you have to be willing to do what 95% of people aren't willing to do. And that really stuck with me and resonated with my emotional body because I was like, I've never wanted to be like anyone. Like, I don't want to fit in. I don't want to be like the sheep. I want to be different, right? Because I am different. And
Right.
so that required me to do different things that I normally wouldn't do. So I would say that is a must.
That's great. And my last question, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
For sure, they can email me at Rebecca@realwithrebecca.com, or they can DM me on socials, which is at Real with Rebecca or Rebecca Schocker on Facebook and LinkedIn.
That's fantastic. Rebecca, I had such a good time talking to you, and I think that we got pretty deep and insightful on a lot of different things. I know I learned a lot from speaking to you, so I hope that other people had the same experience as I did. And hopefully we'll get to do this again sometime. Maybe that social media topic would be good to talk about next time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Omid. It's a pleasure to connect with you again, and thank you for having me on the show, and I'm wishing you the most success.
Likewise. Hope everybody shares and enjoys today's talk.